Okay, so I'm going to read the story The Dog and the Bone. This is the little book, a leveled reader, they're called. This is the one my um, group would read. The Dog and His Bone. Okay, Chapter 1, Lucky Day. It was a warm autumn day, and Dog was feeling lucky. He nosed around some leaves until his snout touched something big and hard. I believe I have found something, he said. He pushed away the leaves to get a better look. Dog was right. He had found something. It was a big bone. Dog was very fond of bones, and this one was huge. He couldn't wait to sink his teeth into it. This is my lucky day, Dog said as he picked the bone up in his mouth. The dog saw some other dogs. Chapter 2, A New Way Home. Then Dog saw some other dogs. They were watching his every move, and their mouths were dripping. Dog could tell these other dogs were hungry. They wanted a big bone like the one Dog had found. Dog knew he could not enjoy his bone with those other dogs around. They might try to take his bone away from him. Dog did not want to fight. He decided to take his bone home and feast on it there. But Dog was very far from home. He had walked a long way to find that bone. He decided to try to go a new way. He hoped it would be a shortcut. Dog ran through the fields. He sneaked past houses. He saw a cat, but decided not to chase it. Dog walked and walked until he got to a brook. The water looked chilly and deep. Dog did not like to swim, so he looked for a way to cross the brook. He saw an old, crude log bridge up ahead. That will do, he said. Crude log bridge means like it's not super well made. It's just kind of thrown together with some old logs and nothing fancy. Chapter 3, A Better Bone? Dog stepped onto the bridge. It seemed solid enough. Still, Dog was very careful. He was almost to the other side when he looked down. He saw something remarkable. It was another dog. The dog was looking back at him, and it had a big bone in its mouth, too. Dog could not take his eyes off this other bone. It looked much larger and even more delicious than the bone he had in his mouth. I must have that bone, Dog said. Dog leaned over and tried to snatch the bone from the other dog's jaws. As he did, the bone he was carrying in his mouth fell into the water with a loud splash. That surprised Dog. He was not expecting that to happen, but it didn't matter. He would get the other, bigger bone instead. Chapter 4, A Lesson Learned. Dog looked down in the water. He saw the other dog looking back at him. The dog looked just like him. He didn't have a bone either. Where had the bigger bone gone? Dog did not understand what had happened, but he knew he had lost his bone. Now he had nothing. Dog continued home feeling very sad. It wasn't his lucky day after all. Fables are stories with lessons called morals. The moral of this fable is this: in our greed for more, we may lose what we already have. How do you know that Dog and the Bone is a fable? Well, we know that fables are made-up stories that teach lessons called morals, and they often have talking animals in them. Number 2, what is the dog's problem at the beginning of the story? Well, he found a bone and he didn't want any of the other dogs to get it, right? And number 3, use what you know about suffixes to figure out the meaning of careful on page 9. Suffix comes at the end of a root word, like full, F-U-L, and it means full of, and in this case, full of care, whatever the root word is. And number 4, write about the problem at the end of the story. What happened to that other bone? Yeah, it was just his reflection in the water, wasn't it? It wasn't really another dog with a bigger bone. It was himself. And that has a great biblical, spiritual meaning to it, too, about greed. And we shouldn't be greedy to have more of what we already have, right? God provides what we need when we need it. And in his haste to try to get something else when he already had what he needed, he lost what he already had, the bone. So, and then we have a comparable text called The Dingo and His Shadow. The sun was setting, the dusty land glowed red. Dingo had some meat. He looked to the side. There was a black dog moving next to him. It had some meat too. 2 pieces of meat are better than 1, Dingo said to himself, and he lunged at the other dog. What is that other dog really? Yeah, it's a shadow. As he lunged, his meat fell from his mouth and tumbled down the side of the cliff. Dingo's teeth did not sink into another piece of meat as he had expected. Instead, he got a mouthful of dirt. There was no other dog. Dingo had just mistaken his own shadow for another dingo. The moral of this story is when you grasp at the shadow, you lose the real thing. What do these 2 animal stories teach us? Don't be greedy, right? Be happy with what you have. Be content with what you have. God will provide. And how is Dingo like dog? They both tried to grab for more, didn't they? And then they lost what they had. Dingoes are kind of like wild dogs that live in Australia. And the picture on the last page hints to that because there's a kangaroo in the background to kind of give you that hint. So on page 20 of your little book, it says focus on literary elements like dialogue. Dialogue is what the characters say in the story. As you read a story, look for quotation marks around words. These show where the dialogue begins and ends. For example, quote, that will do, quote, he said. So you don't put the quotes around the words he said. You just say, put them around what they actually said. That will do. So you could write a short animal story and include dialogue and make sure you use quotation marks around words, whatever your characters are saying. Well, let's think about the setting. Where does the dog and the bone take place? You know, like out in the country, out in the fields. There's a brook by there, so you can kind of picture it's very much in the country. Who are the characters? The main character is the dog. And the side characters would be maybe those other dogs, things like that. Sequence of events. What happens in the story? What's the beginning, middle, and end? What's the dog's problem at the beginning? He wants that bone all to himself, doesn't he? And how does he try to solve his problem? Well, he keeps running home until he gets to the brook, and then he tries to cross the brook over the little bridge, and that's when he sees his reflection, which he mistakes for another dog and a bigger bone, which he then grabs for the bigger bone and loses the bone he already had. So he had nothing in the end. So how is the dog and the bone like other stories you have read? Maybe the animals talk, or there's a lesson or a fable. We've been reading some stories last week and this week that are called fables. So they teach a lesson. Okay, so that is it for that leveled reader. All right, bye-bye.